The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the bustling city streets. Mark, a man in his late 40s, sat on a tattered blanket near the corner of Main Street. His clothes were frayed, his face weathered, and his eyes reflected a lifetime of struggle. The cardboard sign in front of him read, "Lost everything. Need help to start over. God bless." Despite the endless stream of people passing by, few glanced his way, and even fewer stopped. It had been days since Mark had eaten a proper meal. Yet, he sat there with quiet dignity, not begging, just waiting for a miracle. As twilight deepened, the roar of a sleek black car pulled up nearby. The door opened, and out stepped a man in a tailored suit, his every movement exuding power and wealth. It was Nicholas Crane, a self-made billionaire known for his tech empire and no-nonsense attitude. To the world, he was a genius and a visionary. To those who worked under him, he was ruthless and unapproachable. Mark recognized him instantly from the billboards plastered across the city. With a mix of desperation and courage, he stood up and approached the billionaire. "Excuse me, sir," Mark began hesitantly, his voice trembling. "I know you're a busy man, but could you spare a moment?" Nicholas turned, his sharp eyes narrowing as he assessed Mark. His bodyguards immediately stepped closer, ready to intervene. Nicholas raised a hand, signaling them to stand down. "You've got 1 minute," Nicholas said curtly, checking his diamond-encrusted watch. Mark swallowed hard, his hands shaking as he clutched his sign. "I wasn't always like this. I had a home, a family, a job. But life knocked me down and I couldn't get back up. All I need is a little help to find my footing again. Please, just anything." Nicholas tilted his head, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "You're asking me, a complete stranger, for help? What makes you think I'd do that?" Mark's heart sank, but he held his ground. "Because sometimes it takes someone with power to give someone else a chance. Isn't that what you did? Someone believed in you once, didn't they?" For a moment, something flickered in Nicholas's eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it came. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a crisp $100 bill, and handed it to Mark. "Here's your chance," Nicholas said coldly. "But let me tell you something. Life doesn't hand out opportunities for free. Prove me wrong." Before Mark could respond, Nicholas turned and got back into his car. The door slammed shut, and the sleek vehicle disappeared into the night, leaving Mark standing there, clutching the bill tightly. As the city lights illuminated his weary face, Mark whispered to himself, "I'll prove him wrong. This is my chance."
The night air was crisp as Mark trudged down the street with the $100 bill clutched tightly in his hand. He had never felt so conflicted before. The money was enough to buy him food for a couple of days, maybe even a warm place to sleep for one night, but something about Nicholas Crane's dismissive attitude gnawed at him. Mark replayed the billionaire's parting words in his mind. Prove me wrong. What did he mean by that? Did he believe Mark was just another lost cause? Or was it a challenge? Mark had spent years on the streets, pushed around by circumstance and beaten down by failure. But tonight, for the first time in a long while, he felt a spark of determination. He decided to take a risk. The first thing Mark did was head to the nearest grocery store. He carefully selected a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, and a pack of bottled water. After paying for the essentials, he had $85 left. Next, he made his way to a nearby thrift store. He purchased a clean button-down shirt, a pair of slacks, and sturdy shoes. He also found a small, second-hand leather portfolio that looked professional. With his remaining money, he rented a cheap motel room for the night. In the privacy of the tiny room, Mark stood in front of the cracked mirror. He barely recognized the man staring back at him. After a hot shower, his first in weeks, he put on his new clothes and felt a glimmer of pride. He looked like someone who could walk into an office and not immediately be turned away. The next morning, Mark woke up before dawn. With his portfolio in hand, he scoured the city for job postings. He walked into offices, warehouses, and restaurants, introducing himself with as much confidence as he could muster. Hi, my name is Mark, and I'm looking for work. I'm hardworking and reliable, and I'm ready to start immediately. Most places turned him down. Some were polite, others not so much. By midday, Mark's feet ached, and his spirits were starting to falter. He had spent the last of his money on a bus fare to a part of town rumored to have more job opportunities. He entered a small diner and asked to speak with the manager. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor came out from the back. Her name tag read Linda. "Can I help you?" she asked, glancing at Mark's portfolio. "Yes, ma'am," Mark said, standing a little straighter. "I'm looking for work. I don't have much experience in food service, but I'm a quick learner, and I'll do whatever's needed." Linda studied him for a moment, her gaze sharp but not unkind. "Why should I take a chance on you when I've got a stack of applications from people with experience?" Mark hesitated. He could feel his throat tightening, but he refused to let fear win. "Because I'm not just looking for a job. I'm looking for a second chance. If you hire me, I'll work harder than anyone else you've got." Linda didn't say anything right away. She tapped her pen against the counter, then finally nodded. "Be here tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. sharp. You'll start with dishwashing. If you prove yourself, we'll talk about moving up." Mark could barely believe it. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me yet," Linda said with a faint smile. "Let's see if you can keep up." Over the next few weeks, Mark poured everything he had into his new job. He arrived early, stayed late, and took on extra shifts whenever they were offered. Linda noticed his dedication and began training him to take orders and serve customers. With his first paycheck, Mark found a tiny room to rent in a boarding house. It wasn't much, but it was a step up from the streets. Each day, he pushed himself harder, determined to prove that he was more than just a man with a cardboard sign. One evening, as Mark was closing up the diner, Linda approached him. "You've been doing a great job, Mark," she said. "I'm promoting you to assistant manager. It's more responsibility, but it comes with a raise." Mark was stunned. "Thank you, Linda. I won't let you down." "I know you won't," she said, smiling. "You've earned this." With his new position, Mark's confidence grew. He started saving money, paying off old debts, and even helping out some of the people he used to share the streets with. One night, as he sat in his small room, he pulled out a notebook and began sketching an idea that had been forming in his mind: a community center for people like him, a place where they could find resources, support, and a path to rebuild their lives. He didn't know where the funding would come from, but he promised himself he would find a way. Months later, Mark's life looked completely different. He was thriving at the diner, and his savings were slowly growing. One day, as he was walking through the city, he passed a sleek black car parked outside a towering office building. The sight of it stopped him in his tracks. It was Nicholas Crane's car. Mark felt a surge of emotion, gratitude, determination, and a lingering bitterness. He straightened his shoulders and walked into the building. "I'd like to speak with Mr. Crane," he told the receptionist. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, barely looking up. "No," Mark admitted, "but I think he'd want to hear what I have to say." The receptionist raised an eyebrow but picked up the phone. A few moments later, Mark was led into a luxurious office on the top floor. Nicholas Crane sat behind a massive desk, his expression as unreadable as ever. "You again," he said, leaning back in his chair. "What do you want this time?" Mark stepped forward, his heart pounding. "I came to thank you," he said. Nicholas raised an eyebrow. "Thank me? For what?" "For giving me a chance," Mark replied. "That $100 you gave me, it wasn't much, but it was enough to start over. I've got a job now, a place to live, and a plan to help others who are struggling like I was." Nicholas studied him for a long moment, his expression softening just slightly. "You've come a long way," he said. "I have," Mark said, "but there's still more I want to do. I have an idea for a community center to help the homeless, but I don't have the resources to make it happen. That's why I'm here. I'm asking for your help, not as a handout, but as an investment in something that could change lives." For the first time, Nicholas smiled, a small, almost imperceptible smile. "You've got guts, I'll give you that," he said. "Let's hear your plan."
The room fell silent as Mark unfolded his vision for the community center. He spoke with a mixture of nervous energy and unyielding passion, his words painting a picture of a place that could transform lives. "It won't just be a shelter," Mark explained, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "It'll be a stepping stone, a place where people can get more than a bed. They'll get tools to rebuild their lives. Job training, mental health counseling, financial literacy classes, and connections to employers who are willing to give them a chance." Nicholas Crane leaned back in his chair, his piercing gaze never leaving Mark. The billionaire's fingers drummed lightly against the polished oak of his desk as he absorbed the proposal. "And how do you plan to fund this ambitious endeavor?" he asked, his tone skeptical but not dismissive. Mark hesitated for a brief moment before responding. "I've saved a little from my job at the diner, but I know it's not enough. That's why I'm here. I'm asking you to invest, not in me, but in the lives of people who need help the most. I'll run the center, make sure every penny is accounted for, and I'll dedicate my life to making it succeed." Nicholas arched an eyebrow, intrigued by Mark's determination. "You've certainly come a long way from the man who stopped me on the street," he said. "But passion alone won't make this work. Do you have a business plan? A budget? Any partners lined up?" Mark's heart sank slightly. "Not yet," he admitted, "but I'm willing to learn. If you give me a chance, I'll put in the work to make this happen." Nicholas sat in thoughtful silence, the gears in his mind clearly turning. Finally, he spoke. "I don't make investments based on emotion," he said firmly, "but I do believe in potential. I'll give you an opportunity, but only if you prove you're serious. Meet me here in 1 month with a solid business plan, a detailed budget, and a list of potential partners or donors. If you can do that, I'll consider backing your project." Mark's chest tightened with a mixture of relief and anxiety. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with gratitude. "I won't let you down." Mark left Nicholas's office with a renewed sense of purpose, but also a daunting challenge ahead. He had no idea how to draft a business plan or where to start with fundraising, but he wasn't about to let that stop him. His first step was to educate himself. He spent hours at the public library, poring over books and online resources about starting nonprofit organizations. He learned about budgeting, grant writing, and networking. He also reached out to local charities and shelters, asking for advice and guidance. One day, while volunteering at a nearby soup kitchen to gain more insight, he met Claire, a social worker with years of experience helping the homeless. She was impressed by Mark's story and vision and offered to help him refine his ideas. "You've got the passion," Claire said during one of their planning sessions. "Now we just need to put it on paper in a way that investors can understand." With Claire's guidance, Mark developed a comprehensive business plan. It included a detailed outline of the community center's mission, services, and long-term goals. He also created a realistic budget, factoring in everything from building costs to staff salaries. As the weeks passed, Mark began reaching out to potential partners. He met with local businesses, pitched his idea to community leaders, and even spoke at a city council meeting. While many were skeptical, a few were moved by his determination and pledged small donations or in-kind support. One day, Mark returned to the diner after a long day of meetings to find Linda waiting for him with a surprise. "The staff and I heard about what you're doing," she said, handing him an envelope. "We took up a collection to help get you started." Mark opened the envelope and felt tears welling up as he saw the stack of bills inside. "I don't know what to say," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Just keep doing what you're doing," Linda said with a smile. "You're making us proud." 1 month to the day after his initial meeting with Nicholas, Mark returned to the towering office building. This time, he carried not just his portfolio but also a carefully prepared presentation. Nicholas greeted him with the same cool demeanor as before, but there was a hint of curiosity in his eyes. "Let's see what you've got," he said, gesturing for Mark to begin. Mark laid out his vision with precision and passion. He presented his business plan, highlighted the support he had already garnered, and detailed his plans for sustainability. He even shared personal stories of people he had met during his research, humanizing the statistics with real faces and voices. When he finished, the room was silent. Nicholas tapped his fingers against his desk, his expression unreadable. "You've done your homework," he said finally. "I'm impressed. But this is still a risk. A big one." Mark met his gaze steadily. "Every investment is a risk," he said. "But this isn't just about money. It's about changing lives. Isn't that worth taking a chance on?" Nicholas leaned back in his chair, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You've got a point," he said. "I'll fund the initial startup costs for your center, but I'm not giving you a blank check. You will need to provide quarterly updates, and if you misuse even a cent, the deal is off." Mark's eyes filled with tears of gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. 6 months later, the doors of the Second Chance Community Center officially opened. The building, once a rundown warehouse, had been transformed into a vibrant, welcoming space. It featured classrooms, counseling rooms, a job training center, and even a small cafe where clients could gain work experience. The grand opening was attended by local officials, community members, and, to Mark's surprise, Nicholas Crane. "I have to admit," Nicholas said during his speech, "when Mark first approached me, I didn't think he'd follow through. But he proved me wrong. This center is proof that with determination and the right support, anyone can turn their life around." The crowd erupted into applause as Mark stepped forward to thank everyone who had made the center possible. Over the next few years, the Second Chance Community Center became a beacon of hope for the city. Hundreds of people found jobs, homes, and new beginnings thanks to the services it provided. Mark continued to work tirelessly, but he never forgot the man who had given him his first break. One evening, he invited Nicholas to the center for a private tour. As they walked through the bustling hallways, filled with laughter and determination, Mark turned to Nicholas. "You didn't just help me," he said. "You helped all of this happen." Nicholas nodded, his expression softer than Mark had ever seen it. "Sometimes," he said, "it takes a little faith to create something extraordinary." Mark smiled. "I think we both learned that lesson." And with that, two men from opposite ends of the social spectrum shared a quiet moment of understanding, bound by the knowledge that even the smallest act of kindness can spark a transformation.